All right, hey, good morning, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Tuesday, July 12th, 2022. This is your daily tropical update. Once again, in a video. Tropical Atlantic mostly quiet here today across the overall basin. Not much in the intertropical convergence zone. The main development region is pretty dead. As we expected as we rolled into July, the suppressed sort of phase of the overall global circulation has come back to bless us with some good weather across most of the tropical basin and the Caribbean. Also a graveyard right now, which is good news, and it should stay that way for a little while longer. But we are tracking a disturbance near the Gulf Coast here this morning with a low chance of development over the next 5 days, and it does pose a significant rainfall threat for the central Gulf Coast through parts of Florida and even up into the rest of the southeast U.S. over the next couple days. So we're going to talk about that and then quickly hit on Hurricane Darby over in the eastern Pacific. So we zoom in this morning first on our Gulf Coast. Area of interest is all it is right now, not even technically an invest yet by the National Hurricane Center. This will probably become an invest later today, like 98 whatever or something L. Um, Overall, this is just a broad area of thunderstorms associated with what we would call a surface trough, which is kind of a trough of low pressure on the surface, kind of hanging out right here this morning. This was an old frontal boundary that sort of decayed, and now it's kind of hanging out and doing its thing, producing pretty persistent thunderstorm activity, but there is no real low-level circulation yet. You have some, winds coming in from the west over here. You have some southwesterly winds over here, kind of on the edge of the high-pressure cell off the coast of Florida and the Bahamas. But you definitely don't have much in the way of rotation yet. So what's going to have to happen is these thunderstorms are going to have to persist offshore, not onshore, over this warm water, and we're going to have to see that for an extended period of time. These storms continue to produce, do what they do, you're going to start seeing pressures start to want to lower, and you may start to slowly see some rotation, and then we could potentially get a tropical storm from there. However, that is a debatable chance because it's going to depend where this system drifts. If it drifts more back to the north and stays more over land, you are much less likely to see a tropical system develop. And if it stays down here, you may have something develop in the short term before it does eventually work its way ashore in some capacity. A Hurricane Center gives us a 30% chance to happen over the next 5 days. They're not super high on this, but they do note that regardless of whether it develops or not, very heavy rainfall expected with this system. Again, this is the next 5 days from the National Weather Service Weather Prediction Center, talking at least 6 to 10 inches of rain for parts of the central Gulf Coast all the way to the western Florida Panhandle, and those totals could go up if we see something a bit more organized, especially in southeast Louisiana. You can see those numbers right there, 10 inches, and this could be a little bit higher. And even if it go past the next 5 days, more rainfall would be forecast beyond the 5 day window. So this is going to be a long-term, pretty wet situation, and it'll be loosely related to this system for now. And then we'll see if we actually get anything tropical to spin up off of it or not. For now, our computer model's not buying much in the way of development. The European model ensembles showing a few weak members, but there's a lot of members missing on here that aren't predicting any tropical development, and the GFS even less aggressive than that. GFS shows almost no members showing organized tropical development. The few low stamps you see here, 1009, 1010, that's not exactly low pressure, so not enough to be considered a tropical depression or storm at least. So we're not going to be looking, for right now, it does not appear this has a overly high chance to develop, and if it does, it'll be pretty weak. But again, these rainfall totals are going to be pretty impressive, and folks on the Gulf Coast should expect heavy rainfall for the next several days. And even away from that, I mean, there's going to be a decent amount of rain for parts of northern Florida, Georgia. It's going to be a very wet couple of days to come. So some of these areas were in a bit of a drought. So, good news in some capacity. But we look in the extended pattern overall, it is going to be wet for the next 2 weeks or so, as you see the weather prediction or climate prediction center rather forecasting above average rainfall for the southeast all the way through the towards the end of July. So we'll keep an eye on this one. Again, model's not very aggressive on it, and we'll just see if anything develops. But we'll be watching for those little low pressure centers trying to form up, and then where exactly those go. But again, not a lot of storm movement. This is going to be a very slow, meandering, consistent pattern. It's going to bring a lot of rainfall to this region over the next several days. So we'll keep an eye on that and bring you any updates as they come. Also, this morning we do have Hurricane Darby in the Eastern Pacific. I will go ahead and show you the National Hurricane Center's track on that real quick. Maximum sustained winds 140 miles an hour, a Category 4 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale, also the strongest hurricane to date of the season. The system only formed 2 days ago and just remarkably intensified. Very impressive storm. increased 65 knots within inside 24 hours, which is about 75 or 80 miles an hour added on to the strength. So Darby spun up in a hurry and is an impressive hurricane here this morning. But again, out in the middle of nowhere. This is well between Hawaii and Mexico. It's kind of dead slap in the middle right now. Um, and is moving to the west at 17 miles an hour. Satellite presentation is beautiful. You know, you look at the satellite loop here. We'll start at the back of it, where you have more of this classic buzz saw look going on. Nice eye feature here, very clean presentation. Some mesovortices were noted in there yesterday and some this morning. You have kind of that buzzsaw look in the upper levels with that kind of reverse outflow thing going on. But as we step through the satellite loop here, it actually becomes more of an annular hurricane. By the end of the presentation here, you see that the buzzsaw look has disappeared on the left and right flanks, and instead you have more of this truck tire donut sort of shape, and the cloud tops have definitely cooled around the eye wall, which tells us that the storm has become more annular in nature. This is what hurricanes often do when they've kind of stabilized in intensity. They just, there are certain water temperature and weather conditions that cause hurricanes to become annular, and they can survive a good little while at this rate. So an impressive hurricane, but also becoming annular means it's probably not going to intensify any more than it already has. You'll see this just really move off to the west and eventually turn off to the more northwest. And as it gains latitude, going from about 14, 15 degrees north to about 17, 18 degrees north, will dramatically reduce water temperatures. And also, Darby is expected to hit some wind shear in the next about 48 hours, 36, 48 hours. So it'll be a major hurricane probably through tomorrow midday, but then by tomorrow night, Wednesday night, you'll see that weakening trend begin, and it'll be pretty quick. And I think by Thursday, Friday, Hurricane Center's correct that you'll see this thing start to fall apart. Anything that approaches Hawaii has to come from a really far south latitude and then turn up into Hawaii. That's why you've seen so few hurricane strikes on Hawaii in the last, in the satellite era, basically. Is that, the water temperatures basically look really warm right here, but then they're much cooler up here. So storms naturally want to gain latitude at some point. They hit that colder water, and the water temperature drop off is pretty impressive in the Pacific. So the storms just, they don't have the fuel, and they begin to fall apart. So could bring some rainfall and stuff to Hawaii, which I think they have. They have drought conditions of their own, I'm pretty sure. So that may be welcome if it actually gets up there. But right now, not expecting an organized tropical system to approach Hawaii. The whites here, I mean, the cone extends, but it should be post or extratropical by the time it gets here. So, other than rainfall, would not be a significant weather threat for the islands. So that is the latest on your active sort of things we're watching. The National Hurricane Center also is going to see expect another system to develop in the Eastern Pacific later on this week. 70% chance of that happening, but it also looks like that'll be offshore. Busy time for the Eastern Pacific Basin so far this year. For this will be the fifth named storm of the basin's time, and then you have to add in Bonnie, which crossed from the Atlantic to the Pacific, so they've had six total once this gets going. But again, other than that, Atlantic looks quiet, and the Western Pacific looks quiet on your Tuesday. So, no other area of interest to talk about. So that's what I got for you guys this morning on your tropical update. Again, we'll be watching this very carefully to see if anything develops. Could be some short-lived tropical storm conditions later this week for parts of the central Gulf Coast, but regardless of being named or not, very heavy rain coming and flash flooding likely over the next several days across the southeast. So please be aware of that. Don't drive in flooded waters, and roadways, and all that stuff, and keep an eye out even if it doesn't get named. So, that's what I got for you guys this morning on your tropical update. As always, thanks for watching and have a good one.